My mum was in London at the time when the executions happened, and she hadn't told me then, but she told me a few months later that her heart broke, and when she looked at photos of him in the media, Myuran particularly, she felt that could have just been me. I was caught up in many of the similar things at a younger age and could have very easily gone down the same path. Initially, there was a few laughs amongst some of my close friends and family because they'd commented that I kind of looked like him as well. I think I was a little darker back then, and I'd weighed a bit more as well. I've lost 15 kilos since then, so I definitely fit his commanding presence. So I heard the gospel. I was 17, and there was a radical transformation in my life. Before that, I was heavily involved in drugs and alcohol, things that I feel today's culture has normalized a bit and almost glorified, but back then it was very obvious, this was not right. I was very much involved in doing drugs and a little bit of money laundering as well. I was moving duffel bags from suburb to suburb, helping the drug dealers launder their things undetectably. And I technically didn't really know what was in those bags as well, so I felt I wasn't doing anything wrong. But greater opportunities started to present themselves to become a mule, and travel paid for, and hotels and business class flights, as long as you bring a bag back from so-and-so. And it was very appealing to me. I'd just gotten saved at the same time, so I quickly realized I can't do this. The idea of making a quick buck for very little effort and having things that I felt I couldn't have just due to the socioeconomic pressures of growing up in an immigrant family home and parents working very hard. It was very appealing to make those decisions. And had I not been saved, I definitely would have gone ahead. I was very upset when I heard about their imprisonment, particularly because I knew that the stance the Indonesian government took towards drugs. I didn't imagine a good end to the story. He wasn't just this drug dealer or a kingpin, as they would say in the news. He was a human, a flawed human like the rest of us. And this was just one facet of his life that the media and politicians were polarizing the subject, but he was a human. He made a really silly decision, but there was potential to change. The film focuses on the last moments of his life, the night before as well. There was a heavy weight to the responsibility of playing the role. I knew I had to do the role justice. It wasn't just a job or a fun little thing to add to the resume. This was a real person who'd gone through a pretty horrific ordeal, had done some terrible things, had owned up to them. His life had been changed by Jesus, and unfortunately still faced a terrible end, but was hopeful through that. The month beforehand, I'd been reading a lot about the story and trying to get into his mind, which I found it surprisingly wasn't so difficult to do. He wasn't that different from me. But watching YouTube videos and any footage I could find of him and listening to little vocal snippets here and there from news interviews to try to imitate those things, and even his stance, the way he stood and the way he shifted legs when someone had asked him a question that made him uncomfortable, and he had a twitch in his eye, very soft-spoken as well. And so I had to try to bring all that into myself to really do the role justice. The weight of conviction of just how terrible this story was, what was happening in the end, the gravity of the torture, psychological torture besides the actual execution at the end. It was very difficult to stomach, and being on camera, trying to be professional and next take, let's do that again. Some of those things were being washed out of my mind as the fullness of the story was really coming alive in those moments acting. The night before, actually, we slept at the Hunter, me and my family, and my wife noticed that I was a bit different, and I was upset, I was sad, I was confused, just to play a role with such gravity and to do it justice and to make sure that his story is told, and the ultimate point of the film about respect for life, the death penalty, and the idea of redemption, people can change, were swirling around in my head in between each take, and it was difficult to stay focused on the job. But yeah, the story was first and foremost in my mind. Myu's a tragic end for him was not a hopeless moment. Looking on, the bystanders and even the prison guards who were apologizing and asking for forgiveness before they had to carry out their role and pull the trigger, he didn't seem daunted, and Reverend Christie was right there, and what she said was she saw two brave men who were facing the consequence of what they did. They owned up to what they did, and they were owning the responsibility. Of course, they didn't want to die, but if this was what was going to happen, then so be it. They were going to be with their maker not too long after. Reverend Christie did not hold back in describing the love she had for him. She had a genuine love for him as a son. She so tender and beautiful, the way she described their relationship. And it was the same from him back to her. He found comfort and life and love in her embrace. There was a hopelessness that this is how our world is, but there was also a hope in the way the story was told, the way the story was, that Myu wasn't afraid, and that there was something greater than everything that this world has to offer, and that he was going there. And at the same time that there is a horror of the death penalty, and the cutting short of life, and the removal of someone's potential to be redeemed and changed. For me, the major theme that came across and what I would like to communicate is that people can change. The themes around that of redemption and hope, giving people a chance, hearing their story, and providing opportunities. People can change. That's the main one for me.